prowled around the most obvious Byzantine building, the towering former Christian cathedral of Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom, which still dominated the center of the city opposite the Sultan's palace of Topkapi. Outside the cathedral, he slipped and fell down a trench, where he discovered 7 mysterious standing columns. Some people told him they were part of what had once been the great palace of the Byzantine emperors, but Gilles himself was quite sure that they were the remains of a portico which once surrounded the city's main square, the Augustion. He descended beneath the streets and, in a small boat, glided between the mighty columns of an underground cistern, its vaulted roof lit only by his flickering torch. He clambered onto the portico which marked the eastern end of the hippodrome, where the Byzantines had once gathered to watch chariot races, and from his vantage point he could see the dolphins leaping and diving in the Bosphorus beyond. Uncovering the Byzantine past was not, he discovered, an easy task. Too great an interest in antiquities was liable to arouse suspicion from the locals, the Christians living in the city being as hostile as the Turks in this respect. Taking measurements, something for which Gilles was rather obsessive, was to invite denunciation to the authorities as a spy. If one attracted such unwelcome attention, the only way to escape unpleasantness was to offer to buy everyone some wine. The old land walls that guarded the western edge of Constantinople were easy enough to visit, and Gilles could pace out the distance between the inner and outer fortifications. Hagia Sophia, on the other hand, had to be viewed with rather more circumspection, since it was now the mosque of Hagia Sophia, and non-Muslims were not welcome inside. Gilles managed to get in by mingling with the crowds, and so was able to examine its soaring dome unnoticed. When it came to measurements, though, he had to pay a Turk to do it for him. Fascinating though these survivals from the past were, Gilles was only too well aware that they represented but a fraction of the Byzantine monuments that had once adorned Constantinople's skyline. So many churches, monasteries and palaces mentioned in the literary texts, in which he was widely read, had simply disappeared. He knew that there had once been a second palace of the Byzantine emperors at Blasherny, near the land walls, but he was quite unable to locate it. He looked for the Church of the Holy Apostles, said to be second in grandeur only to Hagia Sophia, but no trace of it was to be found, not even the foundations. One monument was being dismantled before his very eyes. Outside Hagia Sophia, he came across a gigantic bronze leg protruding from a pile of scrap. He was tempted to measure it, but dared not, for fear of attracting attention. Even without measuring, he could see that the leg was longer than he himself was tall. Further, studiedly casual glances at the scrap heap revealed a nose that was about 20 centimeters long, and the legs and hooves of a horse. From his reading, Gilles knew exactly what this was. He was one of the last people ever to see the great equestrian statue of the Emperor Justinian I, which for 1,000 years had stood on a tall column in the central square of Byzantine Constantinople. The emperor had sat astride his prancing steed, his right hand imperiously raised in warning to his foes, his left grasping an orb surmounted by a cross. Now his statue lay in a heap on the ground, awaiting its final destruction, and already workmen were starting to cart the pieces off to a foundry, where they were to be recast into cannon. The Turks, Gilles concluded, had always been the enemies of statuary, and indeed of all architectural design and decoration, which was hardly fair given the splendid buildings for which they were responsible. For all his preoccupation with its monuments and their dimensions, Gilles did not warm to contemporary Constantinople or its people, and as he departed, he vowed he would never go back. Some years later, while he was living in Rome after his return from the East, Gilles wrote up his experiences in his Antiquities of Constantinople.